All right, welcome back to our class assignment drawing 2, and this is going to be part 2 of our 3-piece offset, pipe offset, single offset. So we're ready to pick up on here, and we've just done a lot of reference material. Now we're ready to really start putting in our pipe, the drawings that represent our pipe here. So one quick little reference check here. We're working with 4-inch Schedule 40 pipe, and now this dimension, this 4-inch Schedule 40 pipe has a 4.5-inch OD, and so that becomes where I'm going to start using that figure now. So back to my drawing here, and this is the way I like to kind of set this up. So we've got these arbitrary length lines here off my triangle. They're just the diameter of the pipe up. It just gives me kind of a workable length of pipe. I could modify that as needed, but for this right now, it's just this length is just the diameter of the pipe, which allows me a place to kind of set a point to do my development circle. So, all right. So the way I do that, I'm going to just do my reference circle here. This is going to be a diameter of 4.5 inches, and just I've used that as my center line. And I'm going to copy that circle. We're going to trim that up and divide it like we would to get some projection lines here. So let's copy that and put one down on the lower. Let me actually do that now. From the center point here, and I'll get one down here while I'm at it. Same diameter of pipe all the way through this joint. And then I'm actually going to put in a solid line here for my quadrants. That actually is the start or kind of end of my pipe run there. This is where I'm going to trim this out. This is going to be my development circle up top here, and I'm going to trim this out away from it. That's going to be kind of in my drawing space here. So, yeah, I can just trim that right now. I'll kind of put in this upper one, and then I'll go to the lower one here. So, okay. So this is what I've got set up as my development circle here, ready to divide and ready to project some lines through my part. Where my solid line is actually the start of my drawing, and so I want solid lines that come down from it, parallel lines here that meet my miter. And so, I mean, there's a lot of tricks I can use to draw this in, and if you have tricks, use them. If something's quick to you and makes sense, maybe something that's really simple to use is if I have this as an independent line here, I can use this offset, because this is my pipe center here, and it's asking me my offset distance. So this is 4.5-inch OD pipe, and so I'm going to offset this line kind of on both sides of the center line, which ends up being 2.25. So then I can pick this line and kind of snap that line over and snap that over. So that's kind of starting to put in the sides of my pipe that are coming down to this miter line. They're not quite long enough. I'm going to need to lengthen them, kind of get them to match up. My miter line isn't long enough. On one side it is almost pretty close to perfect, which was just happened to be that way. It wasn't like I shot for that or anything, just almost close. And these all change to a solid line too. They'll just be solid green because they are the sides of my pipe. So I'll change that. I'm going to escape that command so I don't offset it anymore. But yeah, I'm going to change these to kind of a solid green. Now here's where I'm going to show you, here's where I could run into some trouble, is when I go to extend this line. So, this one I need to extend and come up. It's going to trim it into where it fits where this one comes in. So this is where a lot of people have trouble on their drawing, is I think I drew this miter line as a poly line. And so if I go to like stretch this to where it intersects, I mean, this seems like that was easy and it worked good. It always pulls off. These polylines always pull off to me. So now I've actually pulled it off of off of the where it truly should lie. And so what I wanted to show you that because I have a lot of us that mess that up. They go to extend this miter line out to the edges of their drawing. I can't believe that's so good. That impresses me. But on that side, but I have this problem now here. So I don't like this. So what I want to do to actually fix this is I actually just want to delete that line. I wanted to draw that as I wish I would have drawn that as just a line. This is where the difference between drawing as a line that I can lengthen and stay right where it was, and a polyline that's easy for me to pull off is what I've just noticed. So I'm actually just going to delete that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And this is why I like to keep my reference circles up, not just delete them, because I can come back to just this upper one where I had my, this is where I established that miter line right there. And so what I can do is go back and draw this as a line rather than a polyline, and I'll show you the difference here. So now I'm going to snap from here. I think I had adjusted that line before I did my video, and so because I should have ended right there, so that was kind of throwing me off a little bit. But now I've got that as a line. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that layer now. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom now. Turn back on these development circles and draw this miter in as a line from this circle to this one. Okay, and go ahead and turn off my reference circle. Okay, those are some just essentially they're the same lines that I had, only they're lines instead of polylines. And I'm just making sure they pass through my point of my angle. They do. And so what I'll show you is I need to get it out to that line. If I just hover over this, I can lengthen this line. Lengthen. Click on that. Maybe I'll just lengthen it by like 2 inches or something. Well, I went the wrong way because I pulled it. Let me undo that. Let's try that again. Escape it here. I want to grip. I just kind of go to this lengthen the command that just pops up there, and I'm going to go 2 inches. I just kind of have to put it in the direction I want it to lengthen. And you can see there that it didn't pull it off. When I did that, it kept it on its point. And this is just something I've found from trial and error, that I could easily do this when I'm manually kind of drawing. Maybe this one doesn't have to be as long, just like an inch. When I'm manually drawing, it's easy to mess that up. So now I've got these overcrossing themselves, and it seems like a lot of tedious work here. But I'm just trying to get an accurate drawing that these come together, because I can just grip these now and tuck these into where they meet each other. Sometimes, in some respects, like hand drawing like this in AutoCAD is a little bit more laborious than just doing a drawing on a board, or that's a little bit easier. But so now I've got these where they intersect each other. That's great. They're tucked into each other. I'm still on my point of my miter point at the end of my development triangle, and that's it. So that's actually, I've just kind of drawn in the top section of that pipe. And I'm going to do that down here now. I'm going to get these up to my miter lines. Then from where those meet, I just bring those together, and yeah, even if I like offset this 2 1/4 inches that way and that way. But let's start with the bottom development circle. Let's get it to the same point. I went back and changed that to a line when I did that with the other one. So let me continue that. So sometimes I just try to remind myself I can just draw in lines and be a little safer. I know we're used to drawing in polylines a lot. So that's that. I can trim that out. Alright, and I just like these offset commands. It's got an auto that's 2 1/4. That's great. I want that one, and I want that one. I want those to be solid green. Okay. So this one I did a little bit bigger reference circles when I drew this miter line, because these ones do intersect, and so if I'm doing this often enough, I kind of get good at guessing and saving myself a little bit of extra work if I can guess those, so that I can do that rather than have to extend these. But I find that these ones extend easier. It's just when they're at a miter angle on the drawing grid, that's the one that gets pulled off. Like it wants to auto snap to a degree. So anyway, just double check yourself always when you do that. Make sure you don't lose that point. I've just had a lot of that go wrong, so I've kind of found that's what's happening. All right. So now we are ready just to, like, I just want to hook these together now. Like from where that point hits that point now, and back down here, if I repeat that, that should be my part. And then I can actually tuck this in back to the middle, because I had drawn that excessively long. That's just the middle. That's actually the middle section of that. That is actually the midpoint of that middle gore. And it doesn't maybe, I mean, with that triangle in the middle there and those center lines, that kind of looks crazy to me. But really, if I look at this pretty hard, you know, this distance from this center line of that up to this point is the same over here. And then the short side here is the same over here. So it is actually a center line of that middle gore. And that's critical. We're going to use this as kind of the point where we develop that from. Kind of top and bottom of that. So, all right. So here's our pipe offset. And we're ready to do some to divide these circles and bring some lines down. One thing I like to do once I've done that'll also show me if I've like pulled my miters wrong, is I can do like a quick dimension here and make sure that this is the pipe, the outside diameter of the pipe. If this isn't, then I know that the points of my miter aren't in the correct place and they've pulled the diameter of my pipe off. But right here, I've just done this little double check that my 4.5 is still maintaining through that middle gore. So I like to double check that. All right. And once I see that's okay, if not, I know that what has happened is I've pulled these things out of alignment, and so as I drew those across, it affected that that dimension. So I'm okay here. So we're gonna continue on. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna divide. This goes back to my divide by 6 here, and I'm gonna go ahead and do that down here. Divide this one by 6. Get my node points established. And so I'll just do lines on these too. So in case that, because I like to come up here, snap here, and then go up to my miter where they intersect and snap there. So that's the way I'm going to proceed to kind of ghost all these in. Here's my next, I just kind of come along here, grab my next node point. There. Repeat that. This actually already has my center line in place, so all I really need is kind of to connect my development line. I'm going to repeat this over here. All right, that's my first. I can continue this whole process up here. Click there, and to the intersection point. And these are all reference lines. These are what establish some true lengths for me to use in my flat pattern. They're simply just for information. They kind of tell me information of where that pipe meets that bevel. and allow me to draw in an accurate bevel. All right, now I can actually take, kind of like I did with the outside of this pipe, I can take and project these through to each other. I've got my middle one, yep, that's great. All right. That's my last one across the middle. So now I've got my projection lines here. So going back to our dividing of my circle, and when I said I kind of would label these yeah, like I would label these. Let's go ahead and do that, because I want you to make that visual on a few of these, and not forget kind of how what these are numbered and how they're labeled. So back to my development circle, you know, I established this as 0.1, and then this was 2, and also 12, and then 3 and 11, 4 and 10, 5 and 9, and 6 and 8, and then 0.7 here by itself. Yeah, so that's gonna maintain. And the interesting thing is I don't have to do a right side view of this. All the information I need to develop this is in this one view. So all these lines being their lengths, they're already ready to copy and paste over to make a pattern. And so yeah, so let's just go ahead and do that, and I'll quickly like label these. I'm going to use maybe just a single line text that I maybe call this one, you know, 0.1, and I'm going to call this one 2 and 12. And then I'll label my flat pattern so you can kind of see, but reference to how I'm dividing the circle rule for this. And this is going to be 3 and 11. And 4 and 10. And I could have numbered these any way. I mean, I just kind of chose to kind of start over there and go in counterclockwise motion. And that just goes back to when the way I kind of drew things by hand, and you write, like, you know, you write left to right when you're right-handed. So yeah. So we would always kind of label that one as 1 and go over across, you know. So I could have started on the other side and called it 1 and gone clockwise. It really doesn't matter as long as I can kind of know which point is which point when I go to put it in a flat pattern. So 5 and 9. And 6 and 8. And the last one is 7. Okay. So, and that carries through this whole part here. So, establish this as 0.1. It's going to be all the way up over to here. On this circle, I guess what I would be looking at is, yeah, it's all going to. And the funny thing is, like this, these miters are parallel with each other. This miter and this miter. I made the same length, this upper gore, this upper like straight run of pipe is the same length as this. So I really only need one pattern that I can copy twice to kind of make this part. So this pattern down here for this straight section of pipe is going to be the same as this, and this middle one will be its own middle gore. So, but the numbers will be associated the same way. So, okay. So now we come over here and we're ready to do some flat pattern work. A lot of times I'll do my kind of outside of my pattern in red. It's kind of like my cut lines is what I kind of think. But and so what I'm going to do is just kind of, I'll kind of be start this thing parallel with that one just for keeping my drawing clean. So this is going to be the circumference of a 4.5 inch pipe. So if it's going to be a paper pattern, I don't need to take any metal or allowances into consideration. I can just do this with 4.5 multiplied by pi. So this line, I need to make it 14.1372. 14.1372. So I'm going to make this 14.1372 inches long, and that is the circumference of a 4.5 inch OD pipe. All right. If that was metal, if it was like 1/4 inch metal, I would have needed to take that 4.5 inch, that would be an OD dimension, subtract a 1/4 inch if it was 1/4 inch metal, and then times by pi, and that would become this the stretch out for that. So we'll do some of that too, but right now let's just work in paper. So this is a representation of the full pipe. Let's go ahead and divide this line, divide it by 12. There we have our 12 node points, and I'll show you how this looks now. So very much the same way. I'm going to start with a weld seam right here on one. It's kind of my short. It's like my shortest run of pipe is right here, point number 1, and my longest would be 7. So a lot of times I'll minimize weld seams, and you know, I can choose to kind of, through this part, I could choose to rotate the weld seams. I could choose to make the weld seams line up. You know, I kind of have control of that, or maybe there's some coding that I have to follow. But a lot of times you'll see me like do the short seam as my initial start point of my pattern. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna copy this line by its base point here, and it's gonna be the start of my pattern here. I'm gonna zoom in, make sure you get these, make sure you get those on the node points, and so that's point 1, and the pattern comes back around to that. So while I had that up, while I had control of that, I probably should have put one on the other end of my pattern here. And really quick, I'm going to go ahead and number this. I'm going to go ahead and number this my pattern line here in this view. That's point 1. I'm just going to work 1 through 12 this way. Yeah. So let's repeat that. Let's call this point 2. I should still be able to get, I might have to watch that when let me try, yeah. Let me just try to copy one while I do that. Make sure it's easy for me to get on my node point. So, because I would copy point number 2, which is this one right here, by that base point, and I want to paste it on the node point. So I just want to make sure I'm not going to attach it to the text. Yeah, that's easy to do. So that'd be point 2. So the thing is that line represents 2 and 12. So if I had 12 labeled, which is actually this next one in, I could have just dumped that over there too. So let me finish like numbering these. So I told you I wanted to do this on a few until you get the feel for these points. That's point 4. 5. 6. This is the center line. So once this is actually halfway around the pipe at this point. And then from there we kind of have that repeat pattern. That's why those points are doubled up, right? So So that one's 0.8. It does have its own number. I mean, there are times when that isn't the case, when things are non-symmetrical, but this one is number 9. And just a couple more to do. 10. And 11. Whoops. Escape on that. Just want to make sure I don't change my text height. It's always asking me what my text height is and my rotation angle when I do these text. And this last one, 12. Okay. So there's our flat stretch out pattern, numbered, corresponding with the way we've developed our circle. So now what I can do is that was the last one I left off was 0.2. So the only thing I didn't do while I had this, and I'll show you this how you usually do these patterns. Yeah, that's 0.2 and 12. And so the next one I'm ready to do is I'm ready to copy number 3 by its base point and post it right there on 3, but 3 also goes with 11. So this, I can actually copy this and kind of maximize my efficiency here. And I'm ready to do 0.4, which is 4 and 10. Nice thing about this is, because I used a center line, see, I actually slightly missed that, so let me just make sure I get it on the node point. Just be aware of that, really check yourself when you drop these. Try to be accurate. I can see I missed both of those. Those ones wouldn't be the end of the world if I was just slightly off. The end ones can be, because it can mess up my pattern to where it won't cut out if they're not joined. So I usually try to turn this into a polyline at the end to make sure this is all conjoined how I draw this in. And that's just one final check to make sure all my points line up. Kind of saves me some errors on the plasma if I'm going to cut it out. So back to my copy here. I'm on 0.5 now. So I'll just zoom in and make sure I'm getting that node. Looks good there. So 5 and 9. And 6 and 8. Yeah, sometimes that's easy to miss. That looks better. Okay. And the last one's point number 7. Let's paste that over here. All right, and that's nice too because it kind of has a different color for my halfway mark around that. So now that's actually what that end of that pipe looks like, stretched out flat. So all we need to do is kind of draw in this top, and to do that, I'll use like a red color solid line. I'll use a polyline for this because I actually want to start it here. I'm going to use an arc and a second point option here, and so I just make sure I'm snapping to the tops of this, and I second point that again. This is just the way I kind of prefer to get a sweeping and second point, kind of a sweeping pattern, as if I was using those French curves to draw my lines. I wouldn't just draw these line to line and have them straight. I would actually draw this as a curved line. Yeah, so the way I've found that I get that is just to do these arcs with second points with a polyline. If it won't let you, like, usually if it won't let you like drop the next, if I'm doing these second points and it won't drop the line after I've picked the first point, it won't let me drop it. Usually it means it's too straight to me. Sometimes I just go back to a line and just do it as a straight line. Some of these curves are really really small curves on some of these parts that we draw. So that one ends up being a nice sweeping curve. And yeah, the last thing I might do just on this is just kind of change the end of these to be red. And then, like I said, what I do is just kind of a final thing to make sure I've got this, like, everything that touches and make sure it works good, is I'll do like a polyline edit. And I just kind of want to do a join. So I'm going to join that and all these. And that'll kind of tell me if I've got things that aren't lining up. If I can get off, see, that's good. So if it all highlights, that means that you know, where my intersection points are, they meet up. And if they don't, then just go back in and zoom really close in on this and see if you've got something that's pulled off skew, or that you missed the node point. Like I said, if you're just a little bit off right here, all that is just it's a little bit of variation in your pattern here, and so it's not the end of the world. If I didn't hit all these node points like perfectly, there is some room for error there, you know, because this is just kind of a hand-drawn AutoCAD file. You know, I've just kind of hand-drawn this, use that information to develop this, and I'm gonna end this video here. I'm actually gonna have a part 3, because I want to kind of carefully go over how I develop that middle gore. So this would be the flat pattern for the lower section and the upper section. So I can actually choose to make kind of copy that. And for me, instead of drawing that whole upper gore, it's going to be the same thing. I just like choose to copy this, maybe with its center line and its like quarter marks is what becomes critical to me. Maybe information to have. If I'm making a cut file, maybe I need to get rid of those so that they don't get cut by the plasma or something. But what I would see sometimes plasma operators do, if your drafters are helping you out a little bit, they'll put a little tick mark there, like just a little bit of a V cut on your quarter marks and your center lines. They help you as a fabricator get things clocked and timed as you put them together right. Knowing where those are, they kind of help you, especially if these things get big and they're 24-inch duct. It's really helpful to keep track of the material in between quarter marks. So. And so if I'm printing this off as a paper pattern, that just automatically gives me those that I can transfer to my part. So use a little center punch, or use a chisel on the end to kind of mark the end of my flat pattern. So anyway, 2 of those. Now just the middle gore. So stay tuned for part 3, and we'll get through that middle gore, and then we'll be off and running. We'll have this thing whipped.